I want to make kind of a film rooting for the witch, like the person who doesn't know where to belong, and those things attract me somehow.
I'm here at the iconic Sunset Marquee to talk to Joachim Trier, the director of the highly anticipated Norwegian thriller, Thelma.
In a very direct way, my first job influenced not necessarily my passion for filmmaking, but the filmmaking I'm doing now. I'll tell you why. Because I was working as a cable basher, so as a camera assistant on live game shows in Norway when I was like 18. And one day I was sitting having lunch, and the other cable basher was this new guy, and I was doing it like once a week while I was in high school. And this other guy and I started talking. It turned out he was a really, really film smart dude, and he had like a big collection of VHS tapes of like Hal Hartley and Fellini and stuff. And we became really good friends. And that's Eskil Fucht, who's now my co-writer on all the films I'm doing. So we met like doing the most silly job in the world on these live game shows. But now we're still friends, and we just did our fourth film, Thelma, together. So that's why I'm here. Yeah, I'm sure it's a couple of things about skateboarding that influenced me. One thing was the fact that I made skate videos, shot them, edited, put on music, and I learned like the basic mechanics of montage, just figuring out and angles and how to look at spaces and people flying through the air doing kickflip ollies. It's quite different in narrative, but still there's a sense of form and beauty, perhaps even, to some of those moments with skateboarding I found. But also the fact that I was a part of a very progressive group of people that were perhaps in our own way all outsiders that have found our niche in life with skateboarding was illegal in Norway at the time. So we had to smuggle our boards in, and we were into punk music, and it gave me that kind of subcultural sense of belonging in a group that were like-minded people. And I feel that with movies sometimes. I travel the world now with these films and talk to people, and there is that kind of, maybe not like-minded is the right thing, but at least this shared passion with colleagues about movies, that I remember we had with skateboarding. But the possibilities of cinema I found bigger and greater in scope than skateboarding. My little brother Emil Trier made a wonderful documentary called Board Control. I think it was screening at South by a few years ago. About that period of time between 1979 and 1989 when skateboarding was completely illegal in Norway. And the people went into the woods and built secret ramps, and there was this kind of cool subcultural thing going on. And then it became suddenly legalized, and I got a sponsor and won like championships. It was a ridiculous, weird thing, and then, yeah, there we are. And now it's like X Games is in Norway, and it's a big thing. The thing is, we have a lot of stunt work. We had live snakes on set. We had people on fire. We were working extensive days underwater. So I had a very, very good and safe context of a stunt team and VFX, special effects people, and everyone, taking care of this. But at the same time, I had that little skateboard film moment when we were doing a full body burn one of the days, and this very talented stunt gentleman would, have a little pipe in his mouth and 6 masks on top. They put him in burn gel, and he has one last breath, throws the pipe out, and he can't breathe until he gets all the 6 masks off. And you see people do this, and they're trained professionals, but still I had a little bit of that skate kick, like, But I guess your question really also leads to the aesthetical choices, not just the dangers of stunting. It felt liberating to play around with tropes from horror movies or supernatural thrillers. That there was that element of kind of trying something which was not just virtuous, good humanist drama, but something where nightmarish kind of fantasy sequences could kind of flourish, and we could go wild a bit. That was fun. This displacement of idea of self that would be a nightmare for me. In a way, I think this film it's personal in the way that it deals with subject matter and themes that what we're talking about, control and a yearning, and for some sense of liberation somehow, and that kind of existential anxiety of detachment from your family that we all need to go through and perhaps continue to go through in our lives to a certain extent. Becoming autonomous, trusting yourself, all those things are continual human struggles that I felt that I could kind of talk about in Thelma. What I'm obsessed with in cinema is the loading everyday situations with a context of drama or suspense or curiosity somehow that even in the middle of the everyday, perceived from afar, there could be tremendous drama at play, you know, that we don't see the inside of things. And cinema should try to engage with an interior process. That's when films are interesting to me. My job is to create the same vibe around the camera for the actors, regardless of where I shoot, and to create the work environment where people feel safe and at ease and that fit their individual needs. That's my job. In Oslo, August 31st, and Reprise, my two first films, we were exploring maybe parts of Oslo where I grew up more and that I know more. But in this one, in Thelma, we are exploring more of the east side and the almost Ballardian kind of brutalistic 70s architecture that there's a lot of in Oslo as well. You know, it's a varied city. And also the university in Oslo is where we shot all the university college scenes in the film. It makes you feel kind of tiny when you're there. I mean, Eili Harboe is such a talent, and we saw several hundred young actors, and it's hard, you know, like how do you find someone around 20 years old that can do such a physically demanding and emotionally demanding part. But Eili came in, she'd done a couple of films before in smaller parts, you know, and in the lead in a film which was more of a comedy, so it's quite different than this. I don't know, I think she was just great. She was right, and there's a little distinction that's hard to catch in English, but she speaks that West Coast dialect, and so does her parents in the film, and she moves to Oslo, further east in the country, much more urban, and so there is that little, at least in Norwegian, a little distinction of dialect and kind of vibe that she did very, very well as she grew up on the West Coast. So she had that kind of authority over the character that we needed as well. I would love to work with her again. We're very good friends, and we've traveled a lot together with the film, and it's been such a joy, and she's getting a lot of attention internationally now, which is great. And I think we will see more of her, a lot of, you know, I'm getting a feeling more and more that it will be me thanking her for working with me in a little while here. So many. Claire Denis, the French director, is someone I admire because she keeps doing her style. And, you know, she's a mature woman now. She keeps working. She's shot since the early 80s. And she has her unique style, and she keeps going. And she makes always films that seem physically challenging, different places in the world. And she shot a lot in Africa, where she also grew up, and also films in Paris. And there's always her style to what she does. I think that's admirable. Karl Ove Knausgaard, the Norwegian writer who's amongst other novels, done My Struggle, which is a wonderful novel. His kind of authority in creating a unique written language around personal experience has been very challenging and wonderful for me. I'm very different. I try to hide myself and show myself only indirectly through my films, where he has actually let his own life take sort of front seat in his writing, and I admire that. Even though it's not my style, I kind of think he's very brave about how he's used his own experience. Martin Scorsese at the moment, because he's that bridge to the past in terms of cinema. Be the most wonderful person to have dinner with, I think, you know, like, and talk movies. It's good to talk to film enthusiasts, and everyone's talking about the death of cinema, and I don't see it. There's a lot of good films being made, a lot of people that are interested, and let's not be so negative. I mean, you know, cinema's great. It's vital, and also speaking of that, I mean, we're really having to define now why we want to use the big screen. And with Thelma, I shot on a CinemaScope, and we're using the sound, and we're trying to do like a cinematic experience, you know. So that's fun.